thanks for tuning in. My name is Mary, and I'm the guide manager here at Alpine Ascents, and I'll be your moderator today, running the chat and the Q&A. The Volcanoes of Mexico is one of our advanced beginner climbs at altitude. Perfect if you've done Rainier or a mountaineering course, and you're looking to get Denali ready. Fun fact, many of the same guides who lead our Denali trips also lead in Mexico. Speaking of, which brings me to our hostess with the mostest, Hannah McGowan. Hannah is a senior guide at Alpine Ascents, and breaking news, she just became an IFMGA guide this fall. That's basically the PhD of guiding. It's really impressive. So if you know Hannah, drop some love in the chat for that huge milestone. When she's not guiding with us, Hannah's climbing, skiing, heli ski guiding in Alaska, rock climbing in the desert, or generally just living the dream. She's actually in Italy right now, rock climbing, living the dream. She'll be leading our December 27th Mexico Volcanoes trip and our June 6th Denali trip, which still have spaces. So if you finish this webinar thinking, I would follow Hannah anywhere, which I think that all the time, you can still follow that dream. Quick housekeeping note, during the webinar, throw your questions in the Q&A box and we'll circle and answer them at the end. I'll be dropping helpful links and stuff in the chat throughout the presentation. So that's enough from me. Hannah, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Mary. And living the dream, wow, thanks, that feels good. It is true, I'm over here in Italy, so it's a little dark in here, but that's why. And thanks so much for tuning in. This trip is so awesome. This is like one of my favorite programs throughout the year that I'm involved in. So it's exciting to me to share all this information with you all and just fill you in and get you up to speed so that you, if you're thinking of enrolling, just have a little bit more information, or if you're already enrolled, you know a little bit more about what to expect. So this slideshow here, basically, we're going to talk about a little sense of place, just kind of where is Mexico, how does it fall into the broader scheme of mountains and the world. And then I'll give an itinerary overview. So we'll look at various maps and photos and just do a day-by-day breakdown, including a route breakdown of the route on Orizaba. And then we'll touch a little bit on like logistics, gear, things like that, food, what to expect, and then we'll go into a little Q&A. All right, so for starters, this is Mexico. It's just south of the US, obviously, in North America. This is North America over here on the left. And right down here is Pico de Orizaba. So Mexico City is a little bit to the west of the peak. And yeah, Orizaba is very close to both the Gulf of Mexico and really the Pacific. It's like the peninsula that is Mexico is pretty, or the piece of land that is Mexico is pretty skinny at that point. So the weather is actually influenced by both oceans. The center of the country and the north of the country are a bit more dry, and basically south of Pico becomes quite a bit more lush there. Here's an artist's rendition of Mexico. So yeah, it is very varied region to region, which is what this picture is all about. And there are actually 32 states in Mexico and one just autonomous state, which is Mexico City. So DF, the District Federal. So that's further down south. You can see here, this artist put the little volcanoes in down there, but yeah, you basically have to the north, really arid land known for like ranchers, cowboys. To the east, it has a lot of Mayan influence, Mayan ruins, jungle, the Yucatan Peninsula there is made of limestone. There's all these beautiful cenotes. And then to the west, it's known for surf, indigenous influence further to the south. And then there's this line of mountains that runs down the center, the Sierra Madres. And then down here, we have a lot of volcanoes. So that is what we are working with here. And Orizaba is the third highest peak in North America. So first highest is Denali, as Mary was mentioning earlier. Denali is something that a lot of people want to climb because it's the highest mountain in North America, but it's also just beautiful and a wonderful space. Second to that is Mount Logan, and third is Orizaba. The native name for this is Titlatepeque, and that is it's a Nahuatl, which is the indigenous people of central Mexico for many years. It's their name for it, which is Peak of the Star. And it's pretty impressive, actually, when you see it from far away. It's pretty flat and dry. There's actually a lot of cactus fields going towards, as you go towards the mountains. And then it rises with a ton of prominence. So it's really pretty wild to see snow from the, while you're standing in a dirt field with maybe cactus around you too. And it is an active volcano. You can look down from the crater inside and see some smoke coming out, which is pretty cool. And this climb's a good fit for you if you have solid footwork with crampons on slopes of 45 degrees. So yeah, it is quite steep up there. There's generally a trail pretty kicked in, but it's definitely not as civilized as Mount Rainier. So having good solid footwork is really important, especially because there's not a place for us to practice walking crampons until we actually get to Orizaba with this itinerary. There's not that much snow in the surrounding mountains. So it's important that you start this climb with those skills already. You need the ability to carry about a 40-pound pack. That'll be just all of our warm things for the day. We don't spend the night on the mountain. We never carry an overnight backpack, but just by the time you have all your food and water and things to stay warm, it can be pretty heavy. And we ask that you've completed a mountaineering course or strong performance on a Rainier climb or the equivalent. And this is a great next step for you if you want to gain more experience at altitude. This trip is really great because we go high and then we come back low. Go high and come low. Our acclimatization scheme in this itinerary really, I think, helps people understand what it feels like to go higher. And by doing that, by acclimatizing on high but lower than Orizaba mountains, by the time you get to Orizaba, you're set up for success. So feeling your body go through all those changes is a really great thing about this itinerary. And can be a great step forward if you want to go climb something like Denali or Aconcagua. So it's a good stepping stone. And this is also a lot shorter than some of those expeditions. So this trip is 10 days long, and versus Aconcagua or Denali are 20 days plus. So, and of course, it's just so fun to be in Mexico. So if you love eating tacos and exploring new places, this is a great fit for you. So here's another artist rendition of just the kind of lower, more central part of Mexico with various mountains. So we have, it's the Cihuatl here, Popo, which is a very active volcano, La Malinche, that's one of the mountains we'll acclimatize on, and Pico de Orizaba over here. So this is kind of an overview of the area we'll be traveling in our time in Mexico. And this big lake is where Mexico City is today. So the Mexica people actually came to this area and settled this and created a big city named Tenochtitlan back in the 1300s. And they were moving south, and as legend had it, they would find the place to settle when they saw a golden eagle eating a snake on top of a cactus. So they get to this place, this big lake, and they saw just that. And so they settled in the lake. It's up pretty high. Mexico City is about 7,200 feet. And slowly but surely the people basically filled in the lake, diverted water, did this and that. And now Mexico City has over 22 million people in the greater metropolitan area. So it's the largest city in the Americas. And it's so wild to be there. If you have not experienced Mexico City yet, that alone is a great reason to come on this trip, because we start and end in Mexico City. And it's pretty hard to imagine that many people living in one valley until you actually go there. So here's a more modern satellite image of where this trip goes. So can we start here in Mexico City? We'll come over here to Tlaxcala and then down to Malinche and spend the first few days acclimatizing and then climbing Malinche. And then we'll go over to Puebla, which is just an awesome we'll stay in the old town, which is more like colonial architecture, beautiful, colorful buildings, this and that. We'll stay there before coming out further east to climb Sierra Negra and then Orizaba. All right, so we're gonna go through the itinerary just day by day, so you can see how it all fits together. The first day, you will fly to Mexico City. We'll do a gear check. It's really hard to accumulate or acquire gear in Mexico. So it's really important that you come down with anything that you want or that you need for the trip. And if there's anything you want and you're not sure, just bring it and we'll edit it there. It's so much better than being unsure and not bringing those things. We can leave some gear at the hotel there in Mexico City. So it's better to bring a couple options. You can leave something there if you decide you don't want it and then reconnect with it at the end of the trip. Usually the gear check is later in the day, so it gives you time to arrive and get settled in. And then after our gear check, which is typically a couple hours, we go out to a big festive dinner to get to know each other, to celebrate that we are indeed in Mexico. And then that night you'll sleep at 7,000 feet. So for those of you coming from sea level, that's your first experience of altitude. You're beginning your journey of acclimatization just by sleeping there in Mexico City. Okay, the next day, we'll wake up fairly early and go to the National Anthropology Museum, which is an amazing museum on the top of the world. It's endless. You could spend days and days and days in there, but we will only spend some time in the morning, a couple hours or so. We have a local tour guide who will take us through the museum and just hit the highlights, give us the backstory, and that will provide a sense of place for the rest of the trip as well, culturally and historically. Yeah, that museum it's definitely not to be missed. So it feels not great to go to Mexico City and not go there. So we have to include it. That's awesome. After the Anthropology Museum, we'll go to Tlaxcala, which is called Pueblo Mágicos, a magical town. It's a designation that Mexico has for several towns that just really embody like the heart of Mexico. So Tlaxcala is one of them. It has the oldest bullfighting ring in North America, as well as an old cathedral that was established in the early 1500s that we'll walk through. Beautiful colonial architecture and a great view of daily life outside the city in Mexico. So we'll have lunch there. We'll go on a walking tour throughout the town, stretch our legs, and then we'll drive to the flanks of La Malinche, and that's where we'll spend the next couple of nights. So we'll be in basically like a resort camping compound there that is at 10,000 feet. And that's been used for various Olympic teams to acclimate over the years. And it's just a really nice campus there. So that's where we'll be based for the Malinche portion of the trip. Okay, the following day, we'll go on an acclimatization hike on the flanks of La Malinche. And that starts out in forest. You don't hit the Alpine until you're quite high. So we might be like just verging on the Alpine by the time we turn around on our acclimatization hike. We use the rest of the day to just get all sorted out for our ascent the next day, because day 4 we'll summit La Malinche and then transition down to Puebla. Malinche, you can hike just in hiking shoes. You don't need boots or crampons or anything like that. There's no snow typically. So boots, crampons, ice axe, those things, harnesses, those things don't come out until Orizaba, just so you know. So yeah, we're in hiking mode, beautiful views. Sorry, like I said, I'm in a public space in Italy. All right. So yeah, beautiful views, and it's nice to get up high for that. Yeah, let's see. The ascent, let's go back to Malinche. The ascent of La Malinche is about 4,500 feet of vert, and it's about 4.5 miles. So it's typically like a 6 to 8, like think of it as a full day trip there. Okay, and then, yeah, we'll go over to Puebla that night, the night after summiting Malinche. And we'll take the morning to just rest, relax. We'll stay in the old part of town. This picture on the left, you can see I'm like drying out the tents and whatnot. That was from a previous itinerary where we used the tents, but it is pretty amazing that you can, you're just in the heart of the city and you can see all that beautiful architecture, the old cathedral. That yellow building kind of in the foreground is actually the oldest library in the Americas. So that's part of the walking tour that you can join if you'd like that day. It's a good moment to take a really nice shower, organize your gear for the rest of the trip, and just feel nice and settled. Later on that day, we'll transition to Zopan, which is at 10,000 feet again. So Pueblo's quite a bit lower, around 7,000 feet. And then Yasopan up there at 10,000 feet just sets us up to continue on our acclimatization journey. And that is where Orizaba Mountain Guides is based. So we'll stay in their compound. They have some amazing, there we go, they have some amazing cooks on staff. It's this whole crew of just really talented older Mexican women who squeeze fresh oranges in the morning for orange juice, and they're making omelets and steaks, and it's just fabulous, the food there. Yeah, so we'll stay that night, day 5 at Zopan, and we'll stay there again at the end of the trip. So day 6, we'll go over to Sierra Negra, which is just kind of south of Orizaba. And this picture down here on the right is Orizaba from the perspective of the summit of Sierra Negra. So that gets us up quite a bit higher. It's 15,500 feet and change. Gives us great views of Orizaba, and it just allows us to move our body in a way that definitely is work, but isn't too grueling. That hike is typically about 4 hours long. We go just a little over 2 miles. And then the vert is a little bit less than 2,000 feet. So it's pretty gentle on the body because we want to get up high, but we really want to kind of save ourselves for Orizaba. And that night, after climbing Sierra Negra, we'll go back down to Zopan. We'll jump in 4x4 cars that the Orizaba mountain guides use to get to and fro from base camp in the compound. So we'll jump in those cars and make our way up a very bumpy, windy road to Orizaba base camp, which is really beautiful. It's very high, pictured tall grasses, and you can see the mountains. Sometimes you can see, well, snow from there if you can catch an evening with no clouds. And yeah, it's just a beautiful place to be. All right, and that basically kicks off the Orizaba portion of the trip. So Orizaba, that should say 18,491. It is not 14,491. Apologies on that. But yeah, like I said, third highest peak in North America. And this is a phenomenon that Orizaba is famous for, this shadow here at the sunrise. So if you get the right moment, and it's, I think, accentuated by the cloud banks down there, it's really beautiful. But we'll wake up at Orizaba Base Camp on day 7. We will go for an acclimatization hike with the same mentality that I described with Sierra Negra, which is we want to move our bodies, we want to get up high, but we don't want to absolutely crush ourselves. So we'll just go for a few hours, get a preview of our route, get a feel for what that mountain is like. And then we'll prepare all of our gear. We'll eat a really early, good, hearty dinner, and then prepare to alpine start the next day. Day 8 is summit day in Orizaba. It's a big day. It's, you know, the whole trip has essentially been leading up to this, so we'll get an early start. And yeah, that route will be described in detail on the next slide. But that night, just so you know, we do return to Zopan, which again is at 10,000 feet. So we'll take the 4x4s down after climbing and then sleep at Orizaba Mountain Guides compound, where you can get a good shower, use the internet, eat really good food. It's just a nice landing spot after a really big day in the mountains. All right, so here is Orizaba. Let's see, this picture on the right is the route, if you can see it there. So you basically leave base camp at 14,000 feet. You go for a while on kind of like rocky dirt trails, a couple hours like that. Then you get into a section of the mountain called the Labyrinth, which is, you must, as the name would suggest, you must know the way. It can be really confusing otherwise, but it's pretty fun going through there in the dark, where you're twisting and turning and going over all these rocks. You're never actually rock climbing, but you're walking on a lot of rock and some rocky trail as well. Sometimes there can be snow there and a little bit of ice. Sometimes it's just dirt, so it's seasonally dependent if you're wearing crampons or not through there. But on summit day, we'll wear boots the whole way. I mean, ultimately up to your guide, but that's the most common strategy. And eventually you'll get to the bottom of the glacier at 16,800 feet. So at that point, you will be on consistent snow. And yeah, Orizaba is a very beautifully formed kind of conical volcano. So it does just get steeper as you go up the mountain. And as you can see in the picture on the left, eventually the slopes kind of, you know, arc over and you walk along the crater to the high point. So vertical gain is about 4,500 feet and about 5 miles. It's a big day. Being at altitude really kind of take it out of you. So just expect to work very hard on this day, but the views are beautiful. And yeah, the route is just really a fun one. Okay, so like I said, we'll climb Orizaba, and then that night go down to Zopan, 10,000 feet. And then the following day, we'll leave Zopan and return to Mexico City. So it's a like 3-ish hour drive, depending on traffic, of course, because Mexico City is so huge. But we'll return to Mexico City. You can reunite with any gear that you have there, and we'll have a big celebration dinner to congratulate ourselves on our accomplishment of this big trip. You'll reunite with anything you had cashed at the hotel, get all sorted out, and prepare to fly back to the US the following day. So day 10 is a travel day that will allow you to return to the US basically anytime that day, whatever suits you, which depends on where you're going. So that's the overview. That's the trip. In terms of logistics and some travel tips, just exercise normal amounts of awareness while traveling. Yeah, traveling internationally, you do always want to be just a bit more heads up because you're probably traveling with some valuable things. You might not look like the people around you. So as long as you are just looking around and doing, you know, kind of normal travel savvy things, then it will likely work out for you. You don't need any particular visa, you just need a passport to go into the country. And that's nice. It has not always been that way, but that's very convenient for us. In terms of a cell phone plan, having an eSIM card or an international plan on your phone can be really helpful. We will have internet at a variety of these places. Basically, the nights we're in Mexico City, not while we are on the flanks of Malinche, but we will have cell reception again in Puebla and then at Orizaba Mountain Guides. And there's typically a little bit of cell reception at Orizaba Base Camp. So that's kind of the rundown. So if you do have the ability to, you know, get an international phone plan, that'll really be nice for you to have. Okay, in terms of cash, you can either bring cash down or visit an ATM, depending on your bank. You might have ATM withdrawal fees or things like that, or you might get an unfavorable exchange rate if you use an ATM, or you can get a favorable one. So just check in with your bank before you go. It can be a little bit uncomfortable traveling with a lot of cash. So I typically bring a little bit of cash and then plan on exchanging most of it at an ATM. That way I don't feel like I'm just walking around with a whole bunch of money. When you are in Mexico, do not drink the water. I'm sure that you have all heard this before if you've been curious about Mexico, but it is true. Don't drink the water. Even locals who are born and raised in Mexico City, they don't drink the water. A big reason for that in the city is that a lot of the pipes and the infrastructure of the city are quite old. And so they're concerned about like heavy metals and things like that being in the water. What I do when I'm traveling there, instead of just buying bottled water, is I'll bring a filter and filter water. So just like I'm in the backcountry, even though I'm in, you know, the biggest city in the Americas, and towns and things beyond that as well. I'll just filter tap water, and I've had success with that in the past. Once we do leave Mexico City, and with the exception of being in Puebla, we'll have big garrafones, big jars of water. So you'll have purified water at your disposal anytime that we are on the road. So that's the Malinche portion of the trip, Sierra Negra, and the Orizaba Base Camp will all have filtered water at those places, as well as the Orizaba Mountain Guide compound there. All right, do not put toilet paper in the trash. Or sorry, do put toilet paper in the trash, not put it in the toilet. That's just because so much of the country runs on a septic system. And so just as a courtesy to the people who own the buildings that will be in, let's just try not to clog the septic system. And so you'll see pretty much anywhere you go in Mexico, there's a small trash can next to the toilet, and that's just a good thing to do. I'm including that here because I've done a few of these trips where somehow it's come up towards the end of the trip and someone's like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. And it's like, oh, so now you know. Again, just a good thing to do for the folks that we are staying with. In terms of charging your electronic devices, you don't need any charging adapter needed. It's the same, well, if you're coming from the US, it's the same plug-in situation, just the 2 prongs that we use in the US. So easy on that front. Okay, gear-wise, as I mentioned earlier, it is very difficult to acquire gear in Mexico. So please come down with everything on the gear list. If you have any questions leading up to the trip, you can always just call and chat with the gear staff. They'll be able to line you out. And if there's something you don't have and you would like, you can always rent it from the Alpine Ascents shop. But it is very, it's easy to underestimate the elements there in Mexico. So here's some pictures of all these people wearing big parkas, even a down skirt that's like me after a big heavy snowstorm. It doesn't snow that much up there, but when it does, wow, it's really something. But yeah, big parkas, puffy pants, all the items on the gear list really are necessary for this climb. These people are wearing double boots for the most part, which is great. Might be one person there with substantial single boots. Double boots is what we have on the gear list, and that's certainly your best bet there. Yeah, again, 18,000 feet is just high, no matter how you slice it, no matter how far south you are. So do yourself a favor and bring all the puffy stuff. Okay, and food wise, so all of your food is included in this trip, but is all inclusive. And the food in Mexico is amazing. I mean, I could just eat Mexican food every day forevermore, as perhaps many of you could as well. But the snacks in Mexico, I think, really shine. Here we've got some hot dog flavored Pringles. I really found those in a grocery store down there. They were great. So my very favorite snacks are these little like peanut flavored kind of crumbly things. They're De La Rosa there. So that's great. It's basically just a sugar bomb. It's really nice in the mountains, in fact. Cacahuate sapones, the May 1st snack there. That's something that's hard to find in the US, but very plentiful in Mexico. So yeah, definitely enjoy the snacks there. What's hard to find there are snacks for summit day, if you are very particular about wanting goos or shot blocks or things like that. So if you have things like that that you really want in particular, that are specific things, bring those to Mexico with you. That way you don't have to stress about finding exactly the right thing or not, because you'll have them. And then, yeah, beyond that, enjoy all the local flavors. Most of our meals will be meals that we'll get at a restaurant. There are restaurants like all along. And so we'll have a mix of like somewhat casual to somewhat like nice and upscale. Well, it just kind of depends where we are in the trip, but we will eat at a wide variety of places. And yeah, again, I just can't speak highly enough about the food in Mexico. Let's see, one more thing that you should bring if you are particular about it is instant coffee for the days that we are in the mountains. If you just like a specific coffee beyond just like Folgers or something like that. So specific coffees or teas, bring those too for the days that we're in the field. But other than that, enjoy all the food that we will come across while we're down there. All right, so that's the rundown. Yeah, it's just a fantastic trip. I love that these mountains are so well positioned for us to bob from one to another as we acclimatize, and then ending on the 3rd highest peak in North America is just really a treat. So that's all I'd like to share with you guys.
That was an amazing webinar. I know I'm sold on Mexico. I want to go. I was sold on the fresh squeezed orange juice, but that's like the weight of my heart.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. Are you ready to get the questions started?
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like we have one from Danny from Seattle. Nice, one of our neighbors. It looks like there are only 1 or 2 flights that leave the same day and arrive in the early afternoon. Any recommendations on best flights? Is it better to arrive the day before?
Yes, I suppose I haven't looked at flights recently for this year. I know there is a direct flight from Seattle to Mexico City. But I can't tell you the hours. But if you do arrive the day before, or even a few days before, if you have the time, Mexico City is an amazing place to hang out. It's very accessible by walking or even by public transit. Actually, the subway, the metro there is, I think it's like the equivalent of 50 cents US. It's like pretty much nothing to ride. And just as an experience of that place, I highly recommend it. It's very easy to figure out where to go and how to get around the city, but there's everything from art museums to parks to like beautiful cafes, and like the people watching is great. You can just sit outside in the street and, have a pastry or something and watch folks walk by. Yeah, I would recommend coming a day early or even a couple days early if you're having a hard time getting a flight.
Oh, wonderful.
Enjoy yourself. Yeah.
Okay, Hannah, I will need your help with this last question because I have not studied Spanish. In the Q&A, Brent is asking if he has family in the PLAXCLA area. Is there time to connect with people like during the trip, or should that fall like before or after?
Oh, nice. In Tlaxcala. Okay, sorry, I was
Thank you for
ignoring
that.
the chat, but now I'm kind of looking through it. Yeah, so the best way to connect, I would say the easiest way to connect is the time that we have in Tlaxcala. If they just rendezvous with the group and yeah, just talk with your guide before the trip and line it up. But we do spend a few hours there. So if they just join the lunch or join the walking tour, or you can visit with them and opt out of one of those things, seems like a great moment for it. Yeah, let's see, I'm scrolling through. I just want to make sure that you are talking about Tlaxcala. But yeah, I think that should be pretty easy to accommodate.
Very good. Next question is about gear. Daniel has a pair of Scarpa Phantom Tech boots. Although these aren't technically double boots, would it be reasonable to take those to Orizaba?
The Phantom Tech, just the not the 6,000, just the Phantom Tech. I do a lot of cold weather climbing in those boots. Those are like my favorite boots for ice climbing. So you end up standing around the cold a lot. They are quite warm for a single boot, I'd say. However, it can be really cold on Orizaba, and it's just the gamble that you would have to take if you did decide to bring those boots, which is if it's too cold for you to have warm toes high up on the mountain, then that's something that could possibly turn you around, which would be really unfortunate. So I would recommend just renting a pair of boots. It's only one day that you are in the boots. So even if it's a pair of boots that you're like, oh, I don't think I would like commit to these, I don't love them that much, as long as you have the warmth and you know you can summit that mountain safely, I think that it's worth it. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, I have another question about, is there any acclimatization benefit to arrive in Mexico City a day early? That's question number one.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I actually live at sea level as well, so I always try to go down a little early. One, because I absolutely love that city, but two, I do think that spending time at 7,000 feet is it's a very significant jump if you are coming from sea level. If you're coming from something higher, it's not that big of a deal, but if you have the ability to do that and you are someone who lives quite low, I think it's really helpful. And I actually think that putting in time at that altitude, anything from like 7,000 to 10,000 feet, has huge benefits. I think it's easy to overlook that because we don't think of that as being that high. But yeah, times that I've lived at 7,000 feet and then gone to the high mountains, I always feel so much better than when I don't. And just anecdotally, like the times that I've been on Denali and we've stayed at 11 camp, so 11,000 feet for multiple days, even if we don't spend that much time at the camp above it, 14,000 feet, it seems like it makes such a big difference. So I'm a big believer in the like 7,000 to 10,000 feet. So if you can get down there, I would definitely shoot for it.
And then second question. So this winter, we have 3 different Mexico volcano expeditions. We have one in late December that you're leading. We have another one January 10th, and then another expedition January 24th. can people expect a big difference in like weather, mountain conditions between those trips?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the rainy season down there, the wet season, so the season that brings snow up high, usually ends in mid to late September. So the earlier you are in the season, the more likely it is to be snowy, and it does get a little bit icier later in the season. That said, typically January isn't that late where it makes that big of a difference. I think the biggest driver to choose between those trips, honestly, is just your holiday logistics, because the first trip happens over Thanksgiving if you're someone from the US, and then who celebrates that. And then the next trip is basically just after Christmas and New Year's. So, I would say let that and your broader life logistics play a bigger role in planning than the weather, because while there is some benefit of being a little earlier in the season, January is not so late that it would matter that much. And in terms of like storminess or stormy weather, there's no particularly favorable time.
Very good. Next question, guide to climber ratio on the trip. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So on La Malinche and on Sierra Negra, we can have a much higher ratio because it's not technical terrain. So we'll have 2 guides for each of those peaks. Well, depending on the group size. So that's typically 3 to 1 or 4 to 1, depending on the split of the group, but it's non-technical terrain. And so as long as we have enough resources for if somebody needed to turn back and a guide can turn back, then we're covered there. Orizaba is quite different though, because it is technical terrain, and we typically use a technique called short roping to manage the upper mountain, just the steeper, icier slopes there. 2 to 1 is the highest ratio that we'll have. So you'll either be 1 to 1 or 2 to 1, depending on if we have like an even or an odd number of climbers with us. But yeah, short roping is just not that effective at a ratio higher than 2 to 1. So we keep it to that.
Yeah. You're good. And then the total group size, we'll take up to 10 would be a full trip. And I think for this winter, we still have spaces on all of our trips, but they are filling fast. So if you still have vacation time this winter, hop on this trip. Let's see. Next question from Martin. The highest he has ever climbed is 13,000 feet. Would you recommend trying something at altitude this fall before he goes to Mexico, like a 14er? And what have you noticed on the trip with people who have not spent much time at altitude? Is this like what have you noticed about altitude?
So how about I start with your second question, because it kind of leads into the first. But as far as people who have spent a lot of time at altitude versus people who haven't, and like how they fare on this trip, I mean, personally, I think that one's experience at altitude has so much to do with your like mental emotional experience at the altitude as well. I've really noticed that people who haven't been to altitude before maybe are kind of like a little bit more stressed, and they carry that stress in their body, and it makes going to altitude a bit harder. So the sooner you can demystify that and understand how your body responds to altitude and how you can tend to it, then you can really develop your self-care around that. And then you'll be more like able to parse out like, and what I'm feeling like, is this normal or is this like altitude sickness? And of course, us guides, any of the guides you'll be working with have spent significant time at altitude, and you're not the only one who will be like, they're parsing that thing out. We can see the signs and symptoms pretty clearly, but just your own body's ability to respond to them, you will certainly do better if you are not stressed out wondering, what's happening to me? Is this normal? Is this headache okay? Is this short of breath okay? So for that reason, I would say if you do have access to climbing 14ers, you should do it, because 1, time in the mountains is awesome, and 2, just the more like experience you have going higher, the more confident you'll go into the trip feeling, and that'll just change your whole experience. Do you have to be successful in these mountains? No, certainly not. Everyone's had a first time at altitude, right? But would you have more fun? Probably. It depends what kind of person you are, but I would say if you can get into some 14ers, that would be great. Yeah.
see. More questions. Oh, the Q&A box is so active. I love it.
All right.
I can help with this next one. Danny is asking, when will we know who is on our team? You'll know your lead guide when you sign up because it's on our website. But for the other climbers, we'll send out a team roster about a month before the climb so you can get in touch with people and start to get that conversation started. And then looks like he has La Sportiva G2 boots, which is awesome. That's a great pair of double boots.
Nice.
Let's see. This one is about summit day. If someone on the climb gets like sick or injured on summit day or close to summit day, is the rest of the group still able to go for the summit? How does that work?
Yes. Yes, the rest of the group is definitely still able to go for the summit. So, like I said, we have a 2-to-1 ratio of climbing. So if the trip is at full capacity of 10 people, then it does get a little bit tricky, this odd and even numbers, but there's always a way to accommodate that. And then as far as someone who needs to stay at base camp, the base camp that we'll stay at in Orizaba is pretty cool. It's set up by Orizaba Mountain Guides, and they have a cook tent, actually multiple cook tents, so that they can accommodate a couple groups at once. And there are several cooks, there's some logistics folks, some maintenance people, and so there are plenty of people around. So as long as it's not, you know, an emergent medical situation, and this person's like totally fine to be, you know, just doing their thing at base camp, read a book, do some stretching, this and that, then there are people there who are affiliated with the company who are able to just make sure that all is well, provide food and water and this and that. So the rest of the group would not be impacted by someone who gets sick or injured before the climb, because they can just stay at base camp. It's a lovely place to spend a day, really. It's gorgeous there.
Great. Another question in the chat about altitude. In your opinion, is there any benefit to using a hypoxic tent prior to the trip for training?
Yeah, I've never talked with someone who has used the hypoxic tent for this trip in particular, because the itinerary is so specifically designed to prepare our bodies for Orizaba. It certainly couldn't hurt, you know, we are going up high, so that's fine. It's definitely not necessary though, and that's why the itinerary was designed the way that it was, where we sleep progressively higher, we give ourselves a break in Puebla, and then we continue on. And you should have plenty of time up high to feel good, at least reasonably good on Orizaba. Everybody's different, but the whole idea of this itinerary is to set you up for success that high. So yeah, not mandatory by any means or even like recommended to use the tent, but if you do want to, just for the sake of experimentation, then it's only going to make you feel better.
Cool. And somewhat in the same vein, we will be doing a webinar about breath work for training for mountaineering. So like breathing strategies to help you get the most out of the thin air at altitude. We actually did a webinar with the same person earlier this year that I could drop in the chat. I got a lot out of it. Spoiler alert, you should not breathe through your mouth if you can avoid it. Breathing through your nose is much better, but I'll drop it in the chat. There's a lot on there, also helpful. And you have to breathe to stay alive, so might as well maximize your breathing strategies. Okay, that's in the chat. I see no open. Okay, last call for questions. Questions. Well, Hannah, I have one final question, unless the question comes in while I'm giving this question. From me to you about this trip, what is your favorite part of guiding the volcanoes of Mexico?
Oh my gosh, that's too big of a question. My favorite part is, I think it's just kind of the synthesis of, okay, thanks. Sorry, someone's telling me to turn the light off here when I leave. Got it. Anyway, I think my favorite part is just the way that this itinerary fits together, where we see so many different parts of Mexico, from like the actual different physical mountains, and we get to feel ourselves go up and down to different altitudes and really feel how that is in our body. And then also the way we go from big cities to tiny towns to like, you know, just kind of like a camping area to then another bigger city. Yeah, I just like how varied it is and how kind of those layers of like culture and landscape and history all come together in this really special place. And we just get to move through it.
Nice, that's awesome. Oh, it sounds like such a great trip. I know we'll have such a good time on your trip this December.
Yeah, I look forward to it all year. It's so great.
All right, well, looks like we have no further questions in the Q&A. Hannah, thank you so much for taking time out of your Italian vacation to host this webinar for us.
Yeah, of
if
course.
you did not take notes, do not worry, it has been recorded and I'll put it on the Alpine Ascents blog in less than a week, probably by the end of the week, we'll get it up. We do have some other webinars coming up on the docket. We have the Denali webinar coming up next month. And then, like I said before, we'll have a breathwork for mountaineering webinar, all about how to maximize your breathing to feel better at altitude. And we'll probably have some other webinars coming up as well. But thank you all for tuning in. Hannah, thank you so much. And we will see you in the mountains.
Nice. Thanks, Mary. And yeah, thanks all of you. I hope that you come down to Mexico. It's amazing there.
Wonderful. Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.